Welcome into Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller here on Monday evening, 17 minutes later than I'm supposed to be. Obviously, the show supposed to go live at 6 o'clock, but I got home later and started putting in notes, thinking I didn't have much I needed to gather, and realized real quick that it was going to take me longer to get the information I wanted to have for tonight's show than I had originally planned for. So that's why we are behind on the start. My apologies for that. But we have various things that we need to get into. Obviously, the title, baseball turned ugly. Bulldogs get swept at home for the second straight weekend in SEC play, this time at the hands of a Tennessee team that had not been playing well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I understand not everybody wants a deep dive, and frankly, I'm not the guy to give you a deep dive on that. I do have some thoughts, though, to some of the things State's struggling with and just looking at where this team's at right now. So we'll talk on that just a bit. I don't have it in the title, but we have basketball portal news in both the men's and women's side. So some thoughts on that. But the big thing I do want to get into later, which is, I guess the basketball portal news is largely positive to this point. But takeaways from the spring game. A game I was not in attendance for, and a game that was not televised, so I'm going off the reports that are coming out of this, which is not a fun way to have to kind of recap what's happening. But I will say that everything I have read to this point coming out of the spring game seems really positive, and I think that's a really good sign. So we'll have some more thoughts on that as we get later into the show. But, yeah, for those of you tuning in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and have those notifications turned on so you do know when we do go live. And hey, when do we typically go live? That is Mondays at 6 p.m. Central Time and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time, unless, of course, I just am late like I am today with my preparation. That Thursday show, for those who are unaware, is a call-in show, opportunity for you guys to come be a part of the stream. Give me your thoughts on whatever is happening in the MSU sports world, the sports world as a whole. I certainly don't want to comment on stuff much beyond that, because those aren't fun conversations to have, today's world as a whole. But we'll talk about the Bulldogs, your chance to come be a part of the stream. That is also a Q&A show. I'll put out a call for questions on the post tab to this channel, which way, hey, you want to be subscribed, so you can go and you can comment below whatever question you have for me. We'll have it on Thursday night. I'll also put out a call over on Twitter, which if you're not following me over there, you can follow me at AilState2020. I hate that handle. It's a really dumb Twitter handle, but at this point, I'm just not changing it. I might eventually. But I'll put out a call for questions there as well for Thursday night show. So Thursdays are a fun time. We had a great show this past Thursday. Had a couple guys come into the chat or come into the stream that we were able to chat with for a while. Had an good interactive discussion. That was one of those shows I was starting at like, how much am I going to be able to talk about? Because the one thing with the Thursday nights is it's kind of a fan-driven thing, or a listener-driven thing, rather. And going in, I didn't have a ton of questions. So I was like, oh, what are we going to get into? But then we had some great calls. We had some great conversations, great live chat. So always fun to hang out on a Thursday night, just talking about whatever's happening in Bulldog sports, with Mondays kind of being more our hitting the news and takeaways type stuff. If you can't catch the streams live, you can always listen to Mississippi State Live. Well, I was trying to find, I guess somebody got rid of my thing for specifically for State, but this works as well. You can catch the show wherever you get your podcast from. If you're not able to listen ahead of time, still subscribe, but follow us over on your favorite podcasting platform so you can listen to the show after the fact as well. I think that's all the news and notes. Rory McIlroy back-to-back at the Masters, which apparently a lot of you hate, but I like Rory, so I'm celebrating it. I just put up water like I'm cheersing. It's a glass of water. It's not like it's a champagne or anything. That was – shout out to Rory for always making sure to keep Masters Sunday sacred and having as much excitement as possible with the round that he had on Saturday. And then even on Sunday, I know down the stretch – it kind of was like, Scotty has that big missed putt that if he makes it, what changes the rest of the way. Justin Rose, man, he was there. This was I'm kind of, talking a little bit from some of the stuff No Laying Up talked about, the No Laying Up Golf podcast, but they hit the point like Justin Rose has got to be feeling like, one, he let this one slip away. Like he had the lead. I think he was up 2 shots on the back 9 with where he was at, and the second 9. Pardon me for not using proper Masters jargon, but he had some big misses down the stretch. Did make a double at 11, and obviously had a great eagle opportunity at 13 and couldn't convert there, which the rogue Tracer making it look like he put that ball in the water. Meanwhile, Rory hits the big shot at 12 to get to birdie, ends up birdieing 13 as well with a big putt there. Had to hold on at 15, that wedge shot. I mean, he got away with that one. It was so bad it was good because he couldn't get any spin on it because he didn't make good contact, so the ball hopped forward on him instead of rolling back, because where it landed, if he had any spin on that thing, it was going to be wet all day. And it goes wayward on the tee shot on 18. I'm not trying to just do the whole recap here, but it's like we lost excitement, but we were getting little glimpses of are we going to get a playoff? And I do think, look, a Rory Scotty playoff for the Masters would have been freaking incredible, because I like both of those guys. But as a guy who does like Rory and does not cheer against him, like I think a lot of American and especially American Southerners cheer against him. If he had lost this thing having a 6-shot lead going into the weekend, that would have been a tough blow. But I do feel for Justin Rose, because dude came so close at the Masters so many times, just couldn't quite get it done. I think I picked Cam Young, and he was 4 over through his first 7 holes of the weekend, and then goes on a tear to get tied for the lead, and had the lead outright at a point on Sunday, but just didn't play well down the stretch for him. Scotty, if he had a better round on Friday, wins this thing. But, that's how it goes. We're in for some fun majors coming up. I know a lot of you probably don't care about golf at all, but I enjoy the tour quite a bit. I enjoy the majors a ton. So fun Masters. And again, I'm perfectly okay with the outcome of that. But let's talk about things that aren't so great, which again, I guess for a lot of you, it's not so great because, well, you didn't want Rory to win. Bulldog baseball. Yikes. That's probably the best way to say it, right? Before we get there, I have to say, I forgot to shout this out, that my favorite tweet of the weekend from Zach Arnett fan on Twitter. This is in reacting to the Frozen Four, so college hockey's Final Four. College hockey is electric. As he was reacting, college hockey is electric. Need state to get a team just so they can have another sport to overspend on and get 0 results. I thought that was very funny. Given the way that the last year is gone, obviously, football has been poor. I don't know if you can say you've overspent on football, but last year certainly could have been a better team than it was. And that's not me saying they didn't spend in football. I mean, I don't know that they put out such a amount that it was you're wasting an all-time roster, but they definitely should have won more than they did. Basketball spent way more on that roster than the results that they got. And now baseball joining the fold in that manner. Again, second straight sweep for the Bulldogs in Starkville. Last weekend against a Georgia team that was top 5 and clearly one of the best in the country, and 3 competitive games for that matter. As much as it was frustrating, as much as you could have real concerns, and I raised them here on this show, look, I mean, I understand it's a long season, but what we do have to point out is every time this team's faced a good team, they've been on the losing end of it. And if they're trying to talk about this as getting to being a national title contending team this season, you have to be able to start winning those games, and they didn't. And getting swept at home was tough. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was one of those things. It's like, all right, they've had weekends like this before. Great MSU teams have still fallen and had rough weekends at home to very good opponents. It's not the end of the world. We're not at the end of the world yet for state baseball, but what happened this weekend really shows that you're in a rough spot. Again, the Bulldogs get swept at home by a Tennessee team that was not playing well. I think the Vols came into this weekend 4-8 in SEC play. I think it was like 21-12 overall, something along those lines. And the Bulldogs get swept. Lose 5-6 Friday night. This is like one game I was pretty locked in on. I forgot. This one was a battle, really through the end. Obviously, you would expect with Valencius out there pitching, which he didn't have his best night, but it still was fine for State. And Bulldogs were kind of in a position to, or had several opportunities. I would say to. No, that's not right. Really, Tennessee had several opportunities to put that game out of hand on several occasions, but State kind of just kept staying in it. And then until finally the 8th inning happens and Tennessee's able to get 3 runs on the board. Controversial call that would have prevented them from scoring anything. And then maybe we're talking about a different series here if State's able to get that first win. I'm not putting it all on that call, though, because State did not play well on the night. But if it is called correctly, State gets out of an inning there, it's still tied 3-3. And then if they go add a run, you're up 4-3 going to the top of the ninth, 3 outs away from getting a series opening win. But neither here nor there. Because then, the next 2 games, Tennessee just handled business. 2-6 on Saturday. State offensively just didn't do anything. And same thing on Sunday, 7-2. 4-2 for much of that game. Still, Tennessee kind of tacked on 3 runs there late to really seal it. Just a bad weekend for State all around. Pitching, like I said, you didn't get the best stuff from Valencius on Friday night. He was fine. He gave up 3 earned runs and 6 innings pitched. But it wasn't a dominant outing from him, but you would expect that to be enough. But then you had to go through like 5 bullpen arms to try to close that game out. And like I said, it could have been closed out with a different ruling, but it doesn't matter. They couldn't get it done there. Again, 2-6 in the next game. And this is one where, again, kind of struggle early. Duke Stone not having his best stuff. 5 of Tennessee's 6 runs go to him in 5.2 innings pitched, only had 3 strikeouts. 4 of those within the first 2 innings. First 2 innings. And they kind of settled in, but, just didn't get the best outing out of him. But again, State's lineup did nothing the entire night. Your bullpen was mostly fine in this game, but between Dane Burns and Jack Gleason, but you got nothing out of the lineup. You only scored 2 runs. But 8 hits on the day. You left 7 on base, struck out 10 times. Just a poor showing at the plate. And that theme continued on Saturday, on Sunday. Kind of, again, the same type story where frankly, Charlie Foster, all things considered, knowing what we know about Charlie Foster, and I know it was 2 runs quickly, but if Foster gives you 5.1 innings of work and only gives up 4 runs as your 3rd starter right now, you're mostly okay with that, I would expect. And then Ben Davis was doing well until, he wasn't right there at the end. You got nothing out of the lineup. You couldn't get a hit. 6 hits on the day for State. Didn't walk once. Struck out only 5. Struck out 8 times. Only left 5 on base go. Like, that's the thing. They weren't getting guys on base at all. Like, overall, it's not a weekend where State had a ton of guys left on base, to be honest, because they just weren't getting guys on base to begin with. And the lineup is where you really come away from this weekend the most frustrated by far. State just had a horrific weekend at the plate, and they had kind of had a rough weekend going back to Georgia. It was not up to standard. This is now 2 weekends in a row. We talked about against Georgia. I don't take too much away from that, right? It's kind of an outlier. Yeah, there's been an individual game here or there, but for the most part, they've been fine this year at the plate. They'll get that figured out. And look, Tennessee, from my SEC at the Voice of College Football co-host Tucker Harlan, who's a Vols guy, according what he has said is, they got a pretty solid trio of starters and then kind of like one bullpen guy, but the rest of the bullpen is a disaster. Well, 1, State made their starters look otherworldly. 2, their bullpen was dominant against State. State couldn't do anything in any of the games. Like, that's a Tennessee pitching staff that's merely okay and they shut down this State lineup. Obviously, Tennessee's bats have been a problem this year, which is rare, and Tennessee was able to score 6+ runs in every single game, which is not great. Again, you didn't get your best from your starters this weekend, and it was a bad time for that to happen. But also, okay, if you're getting more support from your lineup, though, do you pitch a little bit differently? And how many innings? State just couldn't get anything going whatsoever. And, over the weekend, State had 12 total 1, 2, 3 innings on offense. Literally a third of each. What is it? No, is that a quarter? I'm doing math wrong. No, that would be a third. No, I suck at math. No, it's not. It's 12 innings. So, it was 4 a game. Yeah. 4 innings per game that they went 1, 2, 3. Couldn't get on base. Couldn't get anybody on base. You had quite a few others where you got one guy on. Like, that's putting a lot of pressure on your pitching staff, to be completely honest. And it's baffling how bad the lineup has gotten, how quickly. And, it's across the board, but, I was thinking about these last couple of weekends, and this is going back the last 2 weeks. Ace Reese, Noah Sullivan, Bryce Chance. Obviously, State's had other guys emerge over the course of the year. When you talk about, a Reed Stallman or a Ryder Woodson, whoever else. But, those are your 3 dudes. They're all guys who are returning back. Ace Reese supposed to be a superstar player. Noah Sullivan pretty much on the verge of being a superstar. Bryce Chance, the veteran leader of the team that some were questioning if he was even going to start, which at this point, but who was leading the SEC in batting going into this time 2 weeks ago. Over the last 6 SEC games, Ace Reese is 5 for 24, 208 with 2 RBI. Noah Sullivan has been solid, 7 for 24 for 291, but he only has 2 RBI. I know that's a product of not having guys on base around him. And again, 7 for 24 the last 2 weekends. Okay, that's fine from Noah Sullivan, but you're not getting a bunch of runs out of it. Bryce Chance, 3 for 20, 150, 1 RBI. Those 3 combined are 15 for 68 with 5 RBI, batting 220. Your top 3 bats over these last 6 SEC games. And again, understand you've got these other guys in the lineup that are supposed to be able to pick you up. But it's tough when your top guys that you're expecting, all right, that guy's going to get on. That guy's going to show up and deliver. They're not doing it. Which that does, though, get into the bigger picture. It's remarkable that this team, you remember the narrative going into the year, just so much freaking power and just overall hitting ability top to bottom, not just in the lineup, but to the bench. And the guys that you would pinch hit. And you've got, basically could field 2 starting lineups that would be good hitting teams in the SEC. That was the narrative coming into this season. And the thought process there was State's going to be slump proof at the plate because even if they have a few guys get down in the lineup, there's going to be too many other powerful bats in the lineup for them to not still be able to produce. And there's also too many guys on the bench who will be chomping at the bit that it's like, okay, you're not producing, we're just going to put somebody in your place and we're going to go and get runs. And yet somehow the entire team is slumping. It's not just those guys. Garrett Fry is kind of the only one who's been playing well recently. But with him, every time it's a solo shot home run. It's just – it's amazing to see an entire lineup go through a slump. And maybe that's a thing that just does happen a lot. I'll admit I'm not a ball player. The last time I was in a dugout was Little League, God knows how many years ago, when I was the worst player on the team. So I have no business speaking on what it's like in a baseball dugout and whether or not things like that can run rampant through a team. But dang, man, when your entire lineup can't produce, and it's not like we're talking about guys that, it's just hitting was going to be a question with this team. We thought this was going to be a deal all year long. They're going to be able to hit. And that's very much not what you've gotten. And speaking of, and I know Haydad mentioned this on Thunder and Lightning, and I always hate going after him because I know obviously everybody's listening to Thunder and Lightning. I'm listening to Thunder and Lightning. And then if I have the same thought or someone around me has the same thought and I was going to bring it up, it's like, dang it, he's already said it first. It sounds like I'm just copying him. I'm not trying to. One of my friends messaged me in a group chat or just posted in our group chat Saturday night that we've basically become home run and Ole Miss and that we can't manufacture runs. It's all about the home run. In the last 6 SEC games, State has scored a total of 24 runs. 11 of those 24 came from home runs. 7 of the 9 home runs were solo shots. So like you're going up and you're knocking it over the park, out of the park. It doesn't matter. Nobody's on base. And it gets worse because you remember that Georgia game, they scored 9 runs. Now they were hitting like crap up until the 7th inning, but then they go on a rally and get themselves right back into that thing. Take away that first Georgia game, just go to the last 5. Now you have 15 total runs in 5 games. 3 runs a game, not good. 9 of those 15 came to home runs. Like they have become the only thing they have going for them as a lineup right now is that, well, we got some guys who can put it over the wall, which is just not going to be enough for them to be successful given the issues right now with the pitching staff as well. Because you go to that side of it, and I'm not going to harp on it far too much. Stone didn't have a good weekend. Valinkis wasn't at his best, but, he gave you 6 innings with 3 runs allowed. That's not horrible. You feel like you should be able to do enough at home to overcome that. I think you also feel like Charlie Foster's performance on Sunday. You would think with this team playing at home, is that a great showing? No, but we can do enough around that. Cameron Williams asking if we covered the spring game. We have not. We're going to go deeper into the spring game because baseball. I don't have too much more to say, to be honest. But your starting pitching, I think you were mostly okay. This goes back to the lineup, and then obviously it puts pressure on your bullpen. That again, truth be told, was it just a horrific showing from State's pen too? Not necessarily. It kind of felt like it was one of those deals of the damnedest eventually breaks. Like, all right, they held up as long as they could, but there's only so much you can do before it's, the pressure just mounts. And Tennessee was able to get the kill shots that State couldn't. Now, I will say from a pitching staff standpoint, I do find it a little bit concerning that you really haven't progressed over the course of the year. That's one of the things I've talked about a lot with this team is you would hope that, they got a lot of younger guys that, you reach a point of the year as they get more and more experience that they're going to break through. And it kind of feels like you're just getting the same stuff every single week. And obviously, look, I get it. They're under more pressure with McPherson out. Because not having McPherson, of course, it goes beyond you're losing a stud starter. It impacts your bullpen too. Because you're saying, if you have McPherson and Valinkis and you've got 2 really ace quality starters, then it's like, okay, we're going into each weekend with 2 games, trusting that we've got a couple pitchers who can give us most nights 6+ innings of work with limited runs allowed. And then that helps save our bullpen. And we have all these arms available come Sunday when we can kind of figure it out. But so without him out there, and now you're talking about having Duke Stone, who can be a bit up and down, Charlie Foster, who is definitely up and down. Those are 2 of the guys starting for you. That puts a lot of pressure on the bullpen, and they're just really not ready to go out there and be dominant. And it is a little frustrating they haven't been able to figure something else out to this point. Like, how have you not found another guy that you think you could – they go into every single midweek game not knowing who they're going to start. And maybe I'm expecting a little bit too much here that, hey, most college teams, you are kind of piecing it together from a pitching staff standpoint. Most college teams from a bullpen standpoint, it is a question. But we know what we spent on this roster. We don't know what we spent on the roster, but we know State did a ton. And I guess the pitching staff was kind of the one place where if you were to have a question, That was kind of the one thing I will say with the portal class that came in was, all right, Valinkus you knew was fantastic. But outside of that, there was kind of questions with a lot of the other guys you had. And I'm sure a lot of it is Justin Parker trusting the young arms that he had, both on the roster and the guys that were going to be coming in this year. And I know they had a couple other portal, Pitzer was a portal player. He's kind of been up and down. But yeah, man, they haven't really progressed there. But like the reality is, like you're in a spot right now, like when McPherson went down, we were talking about this team like, okay, that's tough, but you have to trust this team still having a high-quality starter in Valinkus. And Stone has been solid for as much as they can go out and produce runs. They're going to be fine. They'll be able to manage the stretch, get through it, and they're going to be winning ball games. And unfortunately, I guess your lineup picked the worst possible time to just completely crap itself. Comment here from Cameron. Baseball can't hit when not facing fastballs. It can't hit off speed or movement. Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia was I noticed that a lot. Georgia had that one reliever who came in like twice, and he just kept throwing a slider. And State could not touch it. And every single time, I'm like, my God, just do none of you have an answer for that? And Tennessee had a couple guys doing the same thing to him, and they just couldn't handle it. That's all just, reacting in the moment to this team. Like, they got problems right now. Like, they are down a top pitching arm at the time that they're in a slump roster-wide, and you don't have a bullpen that can go and help back you up. Like, you don't have a deep enough pitching staff at all to be able to win games, which, frankly, I don't care how strong your staff is. If you're scoring 2 runs, you're not winning. That's not going to happen. But they're in a rough spot. And, again, 6 straight SEC losses. They go from 7-2 tied for first to now 7-8 in SEC play through the first half of the conference season. 26-10 overall, down to number 22 in the RPI. Definitely out of the host conversation right now. Still don't, by the quads, they don't have a bad loss, but they're 6-7 against quad 1, 2-3 against quad 2, 172 in the non-conference strength of schedule, 31st in overall strength of schedule. It's certainly not a host team right now, but they're not playing like it either. Like, we couldn't be arguing for them to be a host team. Look, I can rattle off. We can all see what the problem is. Cameron Williams can't win against quality teams. Yeah, no, it's been the issue for this team this year. Which it's crazy because right now Ole Miss is playing well. What is Arkansas up to? Did they get a series win this past one? State lost that series, but that was one of the things. Arkansas 8-7 in SEC play. How did they do against Alabama? They swept Bama. Okay, so that was good for them. And Bama was number 5 in the RPI. My goodness. So, that's good for them from a series standpoint. But, State lost that series. Like, the Ole Miss sweep is huge, of course. Like, Ole Miss number 13 in the RPI. And right now looking like a host-type team. But, every other time, like, I guess you have to consider Tennessee to be a quality opponent. I guess State just jump-started Tennessee's season, and we'll see what happens the rest of the way for the Vols. This is a concerning spot to be in. And, you look at the upcoming schedule. At Samford, I hate the idea of having to go on the road right now against a mid-major. At South Carolina, who's not good, but I know it's been talked about a lot. They're playing better right now. Memphis is terrible. You get them in Starkville. And then LSU comes to Starkville. State has got to win these next 2 series. They need a sweep of South Carolina. Cameron Williams saying they need a road game, a reset. That's fair. That's a fair point. The midweek road games are always kind of testy, but I can hear the argument of having to get out of your comfort zone as a wake-up call. That's fair. They need a sweep in Columbia. I don't think they're going to get it. right now, I wouldn't pick them to win the series, to be completely honest. What did South Carolina do this past weekend? Yeah, they just went and swept Missouri, which, okay, it's Missouri, but like South Carolina the last 2 weekends got a win at Texas, really could have won the series, and then swept Missouri. Like, there is some momentum behind. They did also have a midweek loss to Charleston, but there is some momentum behind the Gamecocks. And are they a team that we're talking about getting into the postseason at this point? No. But State going on the road, and to Cameron Williams' point, yeah, the road series is probably a good thing for them, maybe as a wake-up call, but it would scare me right now. Like, I have a hard time seeing State winning that series just based on how they're playing right now this second. And I know South Carolina is very bad, but right now Mississippi State's playing really bad baseball. And then you get LSU back in Starkville. You got to win the next 2 series. Maybe, look, asking for a road sweep of South Carolina may actually be too much. Even at home, asking for a sweep of LSU may be a lot with the way the State's playing right now. But Samford and Memphis both have to be wins, obviously. But your next 6 SEC games, you got to respond with 2 series wins. Got to respond with a couple series wins. At that point, you would be, if you go 4-2 over the next 6, you would be 11-10. Not great, but you would at least be up ahead. You'd be in a little bit better spot. But then you're at Texas. Like Texas, Auburn, Texas A&M down the stretch. All good teams. Like, what are you going to do in those situations? Like, these next 2 series, like, these are get-right opportunities for Mississippi State. But we said that after thinking Tennessee was a get-right opportunity for State. They're in a tough spot. And I'm not sitting here, thinking it's season over, but they are staring at, not hosting, which frankly would be unacceptable for this team in this roster. And I saw a couple people online trying to do, I think most of the people who, were telling everybody to calm down after Georgia have jumped ship. But I still saw a couple people, suggest, it's crazy to act like year one, this is going to be a thing. Crazy in year one is expecting a national championship or saying Omaha or bust. Because I think Omaha or bust is a bit, you have to understand it. What happens in the postseason can happen. It's not unfair to, after signing the number 1 portal class in the country and then bringing back the talent that you did, hiring one of the best coaches in the country resume-wise, it is not being unreasonable to say you need to be a host team and probably be a team that's hosting like as a top 8 national seed. Maybe you would say that's a bit much, because of the schedule was going to be difficult and all that kind of stuff. But like, you're far too talented, man. Far too talented. Going on the road for the postseason would be a failure for this team. And look, maybe they go on the road and then a 2018 type situation happens and like, woohoo. But it would be a major disappointment for there to not be baseball played at Duty Noble Field in June. They got a lot to figure out, though, if they're going to get that handled. I think Oak gave the update to Haydad. It could be 2 to 4 weeks for McPherson. At this point, I think you're hoping, can you get him back at Texas? Got to be your hope. They got to figure out the lineup. It's that over everything else. This is a team that's supposed to be able to go and frankly win shootouts, and they're not doing it. But yeah, they're in a bad spot, and you're staring another rough season. And it's a weird thing, given just, I know everybody's doing it right now, but the whole just MSU athletics being cursed mentality, it feels that way, man. It does feel that way. surprised we talked. I know I talked a lot of golf early, but 30 minutes on baseball, which I was not really expecting to do. But yeah, that's tough. Max Tree, how did the O-line look? We're going to get to that here in a bit. I'm going to talk some basketball before that, portal news. But we'll talk about some of the reports coming out of the spring game here in just a second. I need to clear out like tabs that are in my way because no more talking about baseball today. Nobody wants to hear any of that. Do want to take a minute to tell you guys about the wonderful merch we have. The Voice of College Football on our store. All sorts of fantastic hats, T-shirts. Here's that heavyweight tee that's got that maroon color. Polos, sweatshirts, mugs, koozies, tumblers. And, of course, we have several teams represented. No Mississippi State just yet. We hope to get there someday. But if you got a fan of these other SEC programs in your life and you're looking for a great gift to get them, you can find some of that team-specific gear to pass off to them. So if you're looking to rep the Voice of College Football brand and looking to rep specific teams, we got you covered with the Voice of College Football merch store. And fix my camera back. All right, basketball portal news. We have not talked hoops much lately as I hit the table with my leg and shake the camera. But we got commitments for both men's and women's basketball. We'll start with the men's side. State picked up their first portal commitment. R.J. Johnson, guard from Kennesaw State, 6'4", 225, so a bigger guard. Got some size to him, which has been a thing State has lacked in its backcourt for quite some time. Impressive player. Last year averaged 14.5 points per game, 3.1 boards, 4 assists, while shooting 45% from the field. And what was the 3 point? I was on the wrong thing. 42% from three. And a guy that still, attempted about four threes a game. So, someone who can be a true 3-point scorer for you. Really nice pickup. This guy has had an impressive career to this point so far. He was the MVP of the Conference USA tournament with 51 points in their 3 games on the way to the NCAA tournament this past year. Was an All-Atlantic Sun rookie team as a true freshman. A couple years ago, he missed all of last year with injury. So, or I guess 2 years ago. So this current past season, the year before, he missed with injury. But was an all-conference player this season for the Owls, and had a couple good performances against better teams. You go and you look at some of the games that he had. A couple 30-point games mixed in there throughout the year with Western Kentucky and Sam Houston. But obviously, you want to see how he does against high-level competition. Against Alabama, 16 points on 6 of 11 shooting. Really good day for him. Against Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament, not a great shooting day, only 4 for 12, but with 7 of 9 from the free throw line, had 15 points, 4 assists in that game, a couple steals, had a block. So this is a guy that has shown the ability to go and compete against power conference caliber players. It's a good piece to have in your backcourt alongside Josh Hubbard. A good, talented addition to start off the portal class for men's basketball. A portal class where they're going to have to do a lot of work. State, we know they got King Grace back. So with Hubbard, Grace, and now you look at Johnson, you feel like you're starting off in a pretty solid spot at guard. Obviously, you lose Jaden Epps, which you can have up. He was heading up and down season for State, but he was fine. You've had some guys transfer out. Delquan Warren, but I mean it's really not much of a surprise at this point for State. Gonna have to do a lot of work in the front court for sure. Obviously, we talked about losing Jamarian Davis-Fleming. I know when he entered the portal, there was talk like he could come back. I haven't heard anything one way or another there. That would, it sucked when you did lose him. It would sting, of course, if you couldn't find a way to get him back, but I don't think he's found a landing spot just yet. So, maybe there's still an opportunity there, but that's a guy who, of course, was very talented. Sergey Masura, losing him, I thought, Missouri kind of faded down the stretch, but Missouri is one of those guys I look at, and like from a developmental standpoint, I really felt like if he could refine his game over these next couple of seasons, you could look at a really, really special player just because of the athleticism that he shows. Just one of those guys who moves really well on the court and looks like he could be a big-time player for you, which a guy who looks like a big-time player and is a big-time player are two different things, of course. But, a guy that you felt I think could have developed into something more. And so those are two tough losses to have had to this point for this roster. The other guys to have hit the portal to this point so far for the men's team, Achor, okay, Amir Ali, Brandon Walker, not Barstool Brandon Walker, and I mentioned Delquan Warren. All those losses kind of are what they are. I'm not going to get hurt over losing Sergey. I think the potential was there. Like that's one where it's kind of like I won't be shocked if you look up in a couple of years and he's having a really nice go at things. But look, you got to do a lot in the portal. I mean, look, yeah, Hubbard's back, which that's really the one guy back from the team. It's like, okay, but you're losing Epps, losing McGee, losing Ballard, Achor, Sean Jones graduated, King Grace back, but my goodness, I didn't even realize of the everyone who played this year, State is bringing back Josh Hubbard and King Grace. So I mean, it's kind of a complete overhaul once again. Now, you still got Cameron Paul on the roster, who was a good signee for you last season. T. Bartlett was a highly rated signee for you this past season. Obviously, bringing in a highly ranked signing class for this upcoming year. So there's some young talent still there on the roster, but it's got to be a great portal haul. And I'll be honest, and we'll hit on this more at another point, but I mean, I've said it before, like there's almost an expectation you have to go out and win some big battles. Like the pressure, there's real pressure. Not just on Jans to put out a good season, because coming off the year that he had, I don't care about the circumstances. You got to win a bunch of games. This is it for Josh Hubbard. Generational talent, a guy that not only gives you an opportunity to go out and win more games and shouldn't be a guy that, like, okay, with him on the roster, we think we could be a tournament team. That's a guy when you have him on the roster, your expectation should be, how do we go and make a run? How do we elevate within the SEC? How do we assure that we're a second weekend type team come March to the best of your abilities? Obviously, you can't assure anything. You got to put the pieces around him. And, again, RJ Johnson's a good start to that. They need to find a way to get in the mix for some really high-level transfers, in my opinion. To me, this has got to be an all-in year for men's basketball. But they're going to have to do a lot of work, a lot of roster to replace. Obviously, a lot of guys that you're replacing where it's kind of like, okay, not a big deal. But a lot of work has to be done to get that roster back to where it needs to be for the upcoming season. Women's side, off to a good start. They've added 3 portal additions so far. Reese Beatty out of Iowa State, Callie Smallwood from UAB, that's the older sister of their high school signee, Laney Smallwood, and Macy Pfeiffer out of Middle Tennessee, all 3 guards. Beatty was a freshman this past year for the Cyclones. I believe came off the bench, averaging 4.6 a game, 2.6 boards, 3.3 assists, while shooting 38%. So not a big time scorer to this point, but kind of plays more of a traditional point guard type role. Callie, I believe this is going to be her 3rd school. I think she started at a smaller program, but again, the older sister of Laney performed really well for the Blazers this past year. 14 points a game, 3.7 boards, while shooting 46% from the floor and 42% from 3. So kind of more of a scoring threat to step in there to the backcourt. And the Macy Pfeiffer kind of the same way. Mississippi native, 6'1", so you got a little bit of size there. Last year as a freshman for the Blue Raiders, 11.4 per game, 5.8 boards. Again, having that extra size helps. And 1.4 assists on 43% shooting, 35% from 3. Really solid season for her. It's a good group. State has to kind of reload their backcourt. You got Madison Francis back. You got Favor Nwadozie. I can't say her last name. As your top 2 scorers from a season ago. Your 2 players there in the post, or your top 2 players there in the post coming back. Double-digit scorers. Favor obviously averaged a double-double on the season. But your backcourt, having to start over. No more Destiny McFall, no more Trayana Crisp, no more Chandler Prater. Losing Jayla Lampley to the portal does sting a little bit. Obviously, a very talented player for them as a young signee. She's off to Rutgers. I think I saw somebody saying Rutgers is like going all in on their women's team, which good for Rutgers. But that's a player you would have liked to have had back. But you kind of look like you're sort of rounding out the group you have right now. And I'd expect him to go out and obviously add a few more pieces. But this is a good start to the portal class for Purcell. High expectations on him as well. We talked about this some this past Thursday, and the expectations around women's basketball. And look, I think it's clear it's not what it once was from a women's basketball standpoint, but in terms of the expectations in Starkville. But you want to have a good group for sure. You want to be a team that can go out and compete and play well. So definitely hoping for a little bit more and that they can do good work in the portal. Probably needs to be a tournament team for him, this coming year. You need to be a team that can go to the tournament and get back to playing solid basketball at the very least. All right. We are almost 47 minutes into the show, and football was supposed to be the thing we were talking about as positive, and I've done all this harping on baseball and basketball. Why would I do that when those sports are what they are right now? Let's talk a little bit about Mississippi State football coming out of the spring game. So, full disclosure, right off the bat, I was not able to be in attendance in Starkville, and unfortunately, this game was not televised, which sucks. I hate that. So this is going off the reports coming out of this, and I need to look and see if I can get somebody to come on and kind of give their thoughts coming out of the spring. That needs to be what we have. But reports coming out of the spring game for MSU. And again, these are just kind of what's been taken away from what I've been able to catch up on. Largely seem positive for this team. And it felt like State, and I say spring game, it's more of a scrimmage because they ran, 100 plays, and that was kind of it. Sounded like they showed the things that you were hoping to see for MSU. So starting on the offensive side of the ball, Camario, kind of the takeaway, just hey, Kamario Taylor's still in. Sounds like he still need to work on sharpening things up in the kind of the quick to intermediate game, but hit several throws down the field and did so with the accuracy and timing you want to see. Kamario Taylor looks like the guy he's going to be, and this is obviously in a game where his legs are not going to be a factor. And what does he look like when you're able to add that dimension with his legs? So you've got a special player there at quarterback, but then the pieces around him as well. You have Fluff Bothwell back at running back who threw a touchdown in this game, but we've heard Colin Wilson's name a lot. As someone Jeff Lebby has shouted out as having a really impressive spring, and by all accounts performed really well. J.J. Hill as the true freshman. Apparently would have a 75-yard touchdown if not for the fact that it got blown dead. He really showed out. You got some talent there at running back, and we've talked about that battle for the number 2 spot. Who's going to take over behind Fluff? Xavier Gayden had that opportunity last year to secure that spot and solidify himself as the guy there, and didn't really do it. Now he did not play in this game, was battling some injuries. So can't hold that against him. You didn't get to compare directly against the other guys, but we know the freshmen that you brought in with Hill and Crosby, and then it sounds like Lebby really loves himself in Colin Wilson. You can kind of start to read into that a little bit of how that room might ultimately shake out. But it sounds like you've got some dudes in the backfield who are incredibly explosive, but also great at making plays when there's maybe not much in front of them. And can go find a way to go get positive yardage, find a way to move the chains. That's big. You want to have playmakers like that, and it gives you more confidence of being able to run the football effectively. When you take all of that and then you factor in the talent you have at quarterback as a runner and Camario, that's a positive. Receiver, obviously, we know what you got in Anthony Evans, and he was able to go out. Aiden Williams didn't play in this game. But several of the younger and / new guys stood out. Frisco McGee made several plays. Grayson Harris, as a redshirt freshman, apparently was really impressive. Zion Ragens, as a transfer, that It's going to be so funny if Zion Ragens goes out and has a huge year for State, because that stupid tweet that I had, that was a joke about State not doing anything for the offensive line in the portal. And let's go get another 5'8" receiver who runs a 4.3. But if Ragens goes out and has a big year, it's going to be a funny tweet in hindsight. But he was apparently impressive, and that they look like the part of guys who can go be big-time playmakers for you. And you feel like you have more guys in the room. Last year, it really was Ant and Brennan Thompson. Like, okay, if we need a play, we can go to those two guys, but elsewhere, kind of questionable. And obviously, Frisco seems like he's developing, but not quite there just yet, or at least wasn't there last season. Now it feels like going to the spring, there's several options in this room that, hey, man, there's a lot of talent here that they've got. And then even talk about Marquise Johnson, who, is battling, according to Levy, with Frisco. I would have expected both those guys to be starters, but it sounds like they're at the same spot on the outside. And look, Levy might make changes once we go through the fall. If we find out if those two are your two best outside receivers and then Ant's in the slot, well, then yeah, those two are going to start. But you've got options for sure. And again, Aiden Williams didn't even play, but you like what you have at receiver. Tight end, Sam West has gotten good reviews. Joseph Skipworth, I want to shout him out just because his name has come up a million times throughout spring as someone that he's almost getting talked about as the number 2 tight end. And that was someone that, hand up on me, I kind of blew past him when we did the tight end breakdown here on the channel, that I just kind of didn't think a guy, listed a little bit on the smaller side and just didn't have a big time profile coming out of high school. You look at some of the other guys in the room, didn't think much of, but apparently he's gonna be a guy that plays quite a bit. John Cooper likes him. So Skipworth apparently going to get more involved, but it sounds like Riley Williams showed some flashes. Obviously, Zayon Cotton looks the part of a guy. There's a lot of talent offensively. What about the offensive line? Okay. By all accounts, seemingly a solid performance. Did give up a couple pressures. Levy said there was a couple blown assignments. But overall, he felt that the starting unit performed well for State. And that they were giving Camario enough time in the pocket to be able to make plays. Again, at a time where Camario is not really using his legs. They were throwing the football a ton. Some of what I heard and what read up on, it kind of felt like when Arnett was willing to sort of dial it up and send a blitz, that's where some things got a little iffy from a protection standpoint. But look, last year you didn't have to blitz State. You could just rush. You could have rushed 3 and you were getting home. And it feels like they are better. And by all accounts, the offensive line, we've heard throughout spring these rumblings of like, hey, they do look a little bit better. They look like there's more there. They think it feel like coming out of the spring they've shown that. And the starting unit is what's interesting here, because it leads to one of the bigger takeaways coming out of the spring for this offensive line. So left to right, left tackle Miles McVay, left guard DJ Chester, center Cannon Boone, right guard LJ Perdome, right tackle Jakeem Shumpert-Perkins. Notably, Blake Steen running second team, not at tackle, at guard. That was kind of one of the most noteworthy things for me coming out of this spring, and something that gives me some optimism. And here's why. So Blake Steen, obviously a guy last year from Mississippi State, was a post-spring portal addition to that room. We all remember Levy, after the spring game, got in front of the mic and said, offensive line's not where it needs to be. We are going to continue to revamp that room. And he, had obviously just hired Phil Lodeholt back in January. You'd brought in a few transfers in the winter window under Cody Kennedy. Those guys basically got shown the door. And they went out and brought 5 other offensive linemen in after the spring to rebuild the room. The most notable of those was Blake Steen. Steen had been a 2-year starter effectively at Virginia at right tackle. I think had 1 start at right guard mixed in there. And was a solid player. Was one of the better offensive linemen available at that point in the portal. And when State brought him in, the feeling was, okay, clearly that's a guy that you can kind of pencil in as a starter. You got a guy who's been a multi-year starter at the power conference level at a tackle spot. He's going to be one of your starting offensive linemen come fall. And sure enough, going into Southern Miss, Blake Steen was named the starter at right tackle. Bulldog, Mississippi, what's good? What's good is Mississippi State football. Well, maybe. Let's be cautious here. But we're talking about the offensive line a little bit. And the Blake Steen is a backup. Steen again, was named your starter at right tackle going into the season opener against Southern Miss. Starts that game, gets hurt in the first half, done for the year, which was disappointing. And he had struggled in that first half against Southern, but it's one of those deals where, it was his first limited reps coming in because he had come in the fall, season opener, give him time to learn the system. You do wonder what that offensive line would have looked like if Blake Steen had been healthy throughout the whole season. Nonetheless, you get him back for this year, and once again, the widespread expectation is, all right, he's going to be one of your starters up front. Probably in a tackle spot. Maybe they kick him inside the guard, but we're expecting him to be a starter because you're losing so much. The guys you've brought in don't have a ton of experience. I don't know how I feel about experience on offensive line. Clearly, Blake Steen's going to be one of your guys up front. And no, at least in the spring, and look, rehabbing back from injury, still working back from the injury, have heard he's not been full go throughout the spring, but was good enough to suit up and play. That, at the tackle, when it comes to tackle, right tackle, Jakeem Shumpert-Perkins has apparently been a standout throughout spring. Levy was very complimentary of him. He was a big-time athlete and a guy that has continued to get better and better and better, that they feel really good about at that right tackle spot. Like, I think he has a chance to be an elite tackle for us, was the way Levy talked about it. And did mention that if, in the case of Perkins, if they felt they needed to kick him over to left tackle and then you could put Steen back at right tackle, they could do that. But they feel really good about Shump. And right there, I take that as a big positive sign that it would have been really easy to pencil Blake Steen in at tackle to then say, hey, no, this guy is, after a redshirt year, is impressing us enough that we're going to start him over the guy that's got a bunch of power conference starting experience. I take that as a great sign. And, to that note, well, we could put Shump at left tackle if we needed to. Well, if they think he's so great and athletic, typically your best tackle, your most athletic tackle, that's what you want at left tackle. Well, Miles McVay's been the starter there, and he's been the starter there throughout the spring, and there's not been any kind of a change there. I think that bodes well for Miles McVay at left tackle. So it kind of sounds like State's got their top two guys right now figured out. Not that the battle's over, not that things can't change come fall. And like I said, Steen is still working back from injury, but that's a positive sign so far. Remember, though, it's not just that he's not starting at tackle. He's not starting at guard either. Now, we fully expected DJ Chester was going to be one of your starters at guard coming over from LSU. But LJ Perdome, as a redshirt freshman from Arkansas, someone that the talk was when State signed him was like, hey, people like him a lot. Didn't play much at Arkansas, only 4 games, was mostly special teams, but they think he can be a dude. He's running at starting right guard for Mississippi State after his first few months on campus. And some people said, the spring game, maybe he struggled a little bit at times, but I'm going to take the overall performance of spring and the fact that he is starting ahead of a multi-year power conference starter as a sign that they think he can play well. So if you're looking at a situation where Blake Steen is sort of your 6th offensive lineman, that if we got to plug him in at either guard spot or plug him in at right tackle, we can do that. Like that, I'm not saying Blake Steen's a superstar, but there is a signal to that of this is a guy that's played a ton of football and a guy that was a huge addition for us last year, and we don't think we have to start him up front, at least as it is right now. That sounds like you feel good about the group you have up front. That sounds like you think you got an offensive line you can play with. And Levy has said he feels good about his starting 5. That gives me some optimism, man. We've talked about offensive line continually being the thing. I was like, man, and I'm not trying to buy too much. Look, I get it. It's spring. Maybe they completely, you look back, it's like, well, hey, Brandon Snee was supposed to be a big role player here and, wasn't even eligible. So what does that mean for the rest of the group? I don't know. It sounds like they've gotten better, though, up front. I think they are better on the offensive line for sure. And with the skill talent you have and with a potential superstar at quarterback, if they can just be solid on the offensive line within this system, they're going to have the opportunity to be really effective on the offensive side of the ball. So I love what I've heard to this point, but there is real signal to Blake Steen being named second team on this offensive line. That I take as a very positive signal personally. Understanding again that he's working his way back. Maybe stuff changes come fall, but that's a good sign early. It makes you feel better about that offense. Over on the defensive side of the ball, we've heard repeatedly that this is going to be a more attacking defense. That's the thing. All the players on defense and even on offense, when they've been asked about this new scheme under Zach Arnett, what have they all said? It's, we're much more attacking, much more aggressive. And by all accounts, saw that in the spring game. It was more of what you expect from a Zach Arnett defense, right? It's not new to us. We've seen it before, but in contrast to the last few years where previously it was a lot more bend, don't break. We talked about, gap sound football was sort of the idea, keep everything in front of you. They want to go and just fly to the ball. They want to go get the ball carrier. We're going to play aggressive. We're trying to force the issue and create as many negative plays as possible. And that's kind of what you got out of this group. And, stylistically, I've talked about it a bit. I can see that being a benefit for State. I think it's low-hanging fruit to say one is better than the other just because we're talking about Coleman Hutzler versus Zach Arnett. There are teams that play the conservative approach, including teams that don't always have the talent edge that do so well. But that requires, there's personnel you have to have for it, and you also have to, and by person, I don't mean you have to have a superstar group of talent, but there's certain body types, certain types of players you need to be able to do that well. They also have to be well coached, and I think we questioned how well coached they were. So I think it's low hanging fruit to just say changing to an aggressive style is clearly the better answer. But I think it's probably better for this State team. I think it complements what you do as an offense when you're an aggressive attacking offense, having that style of defense as well. And I also think for a State team that I think you've got guys in that defensive front, both between the D line and the offensive line, that asking them to just kind of stay in the gap and kind of, hold up between take on blockers and just make a tackle is not the skill set as much as they're guys that I want them flying downhill trying to go make a play in the backfield. And if they miss and it leads to a long run, so be it. Or if they can't get pressure and it leads to a guy getting open downfield, so be it. But I think they got guys in the secondary that can hold up as well. Because you got to be able to, obviously, if you're going to be aggressive up front, that puts you aggressive on the back end also. I think it's going to be a good shift for MSU. And Dalen Evans and Amari Williams, two guys that there's big expectations for because of frankly, the pressure that comes with those are the two guys that were sort of State's premier pieces added up front this year. Guys where it's all potential versus production, by all accounts, performed really well. And were guys that looked strong. And there was Will Whitson was out, Calvin Dinkins were out. So two guys who could be starters for you were not playing on that defensive line. Fat Forrest was starting at linebacker alongside Tyler Lockhart. Now, Zachary Tillman and Jalen Smith out. That's part of why. But Darian Gillette was, behind Fat. So I think that's a good sign for him that he's taken a step forward. And obviously, what you got in Tyler Lockhart. And I know Fat Forrest had a sack in this game. So a guy who's going out and making some plays. So, you've got those pieces in the linebacker room. You feel good about that. Kelly Jones was still locked down at an interception in this game. And what I've heard is even though there were big plays from the offense downfield, the guys you expect to be your guys in the secondary held up. It's sort of the way it's been described. Jordan Gilbert played well. Braylon Womack had a lot of people very impressed with him. Tanner Johnson was starting for State. We haven't talked about him a lot, but veteran in the room now at this point, got some playing time last year. But Marcus Williams and Kendall Dolby got a lot of reps and playing with different groups. I think Jet Jefferson was running as first-team corner opposite of Kelly. We talked a little bit about that last week that, hey, don't forget there was a lot of expectations for that guy or a lot of buzz around that guy last fall prior to him getting injured. It kind of sounds like there was good give and take on both sides. But I think it's the biggest thing you want to see out of the spring. And you saw enough to come out of this feeling good that, one, State is a better football team, but two, they could be a good enough team to take a real step forward. And we've talked about the schedule a lot and what could a real step forward really mean given what they have to play. But, do I think they can go out and be a solid bowl team? Right now, I do. And if you can do more than that, great, fantastic. But I think there's some pieces here. again, like Zach Arnett running the defense, you expect the defense to be better. And it sounds like they have improved enough up front that you can really see a true legitimate step forward on that side of the ball. Offense, it comes down to offensive line, and everything coming out of the spring, since all of our panic about losing Brandon Snee, everything since that point has sounded positive for the offensive line. And we've said it many times, we don't need that unit to be dominant. Can it just be a solid group for them up front? I think you can be a little bit optimistic about Bulldog football. I really do. I'm not saying go get your hopes up that this team is going to suddenly, ascend in the SEC. But do I think they've got enough pieces on the roster at this point to take the type of step forward you would have to see to feel good about Jeff Lebby moving forward? I do. We've talked about this roster a lot, that there's a lot of pieces you look at that can be excited. It's just there's the question marks. And look, those question marks still exist. And they're in the trenches. And maybe we come out of this, the season arrives, and we find out, man, it was just two super mediocre lines of scrimmage going at each other, and that's where the competition was in camp. Maybe that's what happens. But it sounds like they genuinely have improved on both the offensive and defensive lines. And you think about how close they were last year with those groups being what they were. Now you have a more dynamic quarterback. You've got a better coach leading your defense. You've upgraded at almost every other position spot on the field around that. Schedule will be what it is. I think it's a better football team. Maybe I'm being a fan, being optimistic. I'm buying into spring hype. But I think state football is going to be better next year. This coming season, rather. I think you're going to get a better team. And we've got a long way to go. We'll obviously dive more into this. But everything we've heard so far sounds good. And hopefully I can get someone in to recap the spring a little bit more. I need to look into that to kind of get some deeper thoughts on how this team has progressed coming out of spring practices. But it feels like they've taken the strides they needed to. It's a pivotal year. It feels like we keep saying it's a pivotal year for every single sport. And a lot of it has not gone the way we would like it to. But, it's make or break, to be honest, for Jeff Lebby and his program. So hopefully they have taken the strides that they need to, and it's going to be a solid team. That'll do it for me tonight. I will be back on Thursday. Again, that is going to be a call-in show and a Q&A show. So you can call into the stream, and we can chat about whatever. You can leave me a question. I'll have a post up on the channel. Comment down below and give me your question. Or you can find me on Twitter, and I'll make sure to make note of it to talk about. And we'll have a fun show Thursday night. Hopefully we're not having to do the whole, get us to football season thing. Man, how many years have state fans been doing, God, please just get us to basketball season. God, please get us to baseball season. God, please get us to football season. It's been going on for a while. I don't want to have to do get us to football season right now with this baseball team. Please, for the love of God, figure it out. We need to have a sport that delivers a good season. And at this point, obviously, you're avoiding not having the lumps along the way because they've happened. But can they regroup over these next couple of weeks? And we're back to saying, all right, they're fine. Going to be a fun year. Please do that. That'd be a big positive. But yeah, appreciate everyone who tuned in tonight. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel and have the notifications turned on so you do know we do go live. And as always, swing your sword and hail stay.
Hey, y'all. This is Grant Sashery of LSU at the Voice of College Football Network. I'm here today to announce that the Voice of College Football Network now has its official website. It's been uploaded so you can look at all the latest news and content from the Voice of College Football Network. You can also look at different forums, channels, shows, and it has to show all the show schedules right here and the host. Make sure to check out the Voice of College Football's new website at vocfb.com. Once again, vocfb.com.